2022 saw the return of D23, a Disney convention held every 2 years just outside the original Disneyland park in Anaheim. This year they were celebrating the company's upcoming 100th anniversary, so when my sister asked if I wanted to tag along for a trip, I was like, yeah, maybe, could be interesting, let me think about it. Yeah, of course I went, and I had a good time. Saw so many things I've always wanted to see, met so many people I've always wanted to meet, and even found some people I'll always wish I could have met. However, it ended up being more than just a holiday. The Disney I visited found itself at a crossroads under its abruptly positioned new management, and standing there, in the center of its business and where so many of its plans were supposed to be happening, it became an eye-opening experience, giving me better insight into its current relationship with its core audience, its collaborators, even into my own feelings towards the parks and company history. And I thought, you know, that could be a video. Or maybe I just wanted to show you this.
Oh, it's just like Fred Astaire.
Professional choreographer.
Also, very briefly passed by Jenny Nicholson. Shorter than you think? I knew getting on a plane after 2 years of a pandemic was going to be a bit of a readjustment, reminding myself how to do all the paperwork, the commute, stop that, and manage 9 hours of stretching time. But it's quite another thing to land right in the middle of this. Camp Hollywood was first on my sister's agenda, a swing dance social event like many she'd taken part in over the years, so I thought it was only right to finally see one of these for myself, and blimey, there's a lot of you here, innit? This event was apparently pretty big when compared to many of those back home, and it's an education, getting to see this not through the highly stylized choreography of a period movie, but through people enjoying the style on their own terms. Clearly a hunger still out there for this kind of thing. You gotta stop by just to hear the band. Nothing I'd show you here would really be able to do the sound justice. This was also a night of competition, with some of the top swing couples from all over the world going head to head. Nobody holds back when one of these is kicking off. It's a bit frightening. As expected, it was pretty special to see this live, having only watched streams before or getting details from my sister, who's been all over this scene for years. Seriously, she's been slowly making her way through these events and expanding her skills each time. You can even catch her online matching Donald O'Connor step for step. Overachieve in my own videos, why don't you? I mention all this because it kind of sets the social tone of the trip. We city Brits aren't used to having strangers want to talk to us, but in America it happens all the time, even before they hear the accent. So it was good to kick off with something like this. Probably didn't need to worry about it anyway. I mean, nobody's gonna want our opinion on anything big, right? Following day, bags packed, we headed off to the parks, and it was, warm. Not a usual summer for Cali, so I'm told, but we managed, at a park I hadn't been to for a long time. Some of you from way back may even remember my first trip, though I wish you didn't. Paris was the park of my childhood, having visited twice, and I'd finally been to Walt Disney World in Florida in 2015. But when I started this channel in 2008, attempting to put together an amateur documentary on Disney's history, I was on my way to Disneyland for Christmas Day. Huge mistake, never again. The park was packed, absolute chaos, and the thing that got us through were the stressed employees working hard to try and make it an otherwise good time, which they totally did. There will never be a better Bert.
I must say, he's rather tall for a mouse, a bit of an hybrid mouse. A good sort of hybrid, not an evil gone wrong hybrid.
This was a satisfying do-over, and while it was still pretty chocker, that's British for busy, it was manageable enough that we got to do everything on the list. I know I'm likely to get filed under the Disney adult records for talking about this at all, but it really is a place that combines a lot of what I'm about. It's game theory, it's animation, it's performance and music and immersive theatre, as well as maintaining a cross-section of styles I love and grew up on that I can't get anywhere else. All my ragtime and jazz piano friends live here. Not that I feel I have to be there 24/7, but I've known a lot of people because of those backgrounds who've gone through the various systems that often lead here again. And let's face it, you see it crop up in my videos all the time. I've just never found an excuse to really talk about it until now. Lucky you. Having now experienced all the Western Disney parks and kept up with friends and what's happening online, I think I've a better sense of the differences than before. Emphasis on think. Paris has always seemed the quietest, especially off-season. Beautifully constructed and designed thanks to people like Tony Baxter, the GOAT, but followed by a history of failure due to poor marketing and a difference in European tastes that has left it underpopulated and serviced where rides and showbiz elements are concerned. Though this has slowly been changed over the years, how on earth did I miss this? Walt Disney World in Florida is the big vacation. The bumper crop of parks with enough space to breathe and loads of rides and events. A huge amount of off-the-wall ideas, and the mecca for food options as you eat your way around the whole wide world in the one and only Epcot and wonder why Hampton Court's so small. It's a bit bigger than this, chaps. However, it's also more regimented in its use of entertainment, and the rides are often cut-down versions of the originals, though some may argue this is made up for by the fact it still has the People Mover, which helps you see things like Mr. Incredible sidling up to two moms at a dance party like the Fonz. God, I wish I'd filmed that. But California is home to the Disneyland. Sure, it's always going to be busy. You're effectively dealing with a museum piece that has difficulty expanding to accommodate changing demands, and even more than Florida, it's a local park, embedded in California as a tourist stop in Influencer Central. Not that I can talk. But you're going for the craft, the spontaneity of the character interactions, the foundations of an idea we're still talking about that people want to see for themselves for all those reasons and more, and I'm very satisfied I got to experience that at least once, and not vicariously through Samantha Brown on her quest to get drunk by noon.
There are over 60 glasses of wine offered here, so I'm starting with one and going down the list.
It isn't just about riding the rides and eating the snacks or trying the wines. It's the details. It's the place where you all accept the conceit this is real and participate in total madness. You watch Pooh's soul leave his body and enter a nightmare world he doesn't even bat an eye at, on a car where the only person in front of you is a random geezer wondering where it all went wrong. You take part in a tiki ritual to summon a bunch of singing birds, though not as tasty as the one where you summon a god to bless your cinnamon rum punch. I even had John Rhys Davies tell me what would happen if I stared at the treasure of the hidden temple. God, I wish. The whole thing is designed to engage you beyond cheap thrills, though that's been added to by the knowledge you're taking part in living history, and real ones know where the not-so-living stuff has been buried.
Jackie Chan!
Spread out and lock it down.
And Cindy Crawford.
It's the entertainment factor that sets Disney apart from the rest. There were always efforts to try that in the theme parks back home, but nobody had the same sense of showbiz, or enough money to catch what Disney has instinctively understood. They kind of always get it wrong. It's why people miss the Dreamfinder character, or the unique park attractions with their own history. It's why I curse every day that I was born too late to ever be the kid who got taken to Pleasure Island with all my friends, who'd go to all the disco clubs and have relationship dramas while I sat in the Explorers Club dining with my true peers. It's that history of entertainment beyond static experiences which I feel keeps it fresh the most. If you hate the Monsters Inc. laugh floor at Walt Disney World because you think it's just dad jokes, then I think you're missing the spontaneity it offers and where I think a lot of attractions have been trying to go the last couple years, and why people still enjoy just meeting folks in funny outfits.
Do you agree to turn over your fellow traitors?
The actors were really making it work in that weather. It's a tough gig to be there for any member of staff, and the characters were going out of their way to make extra time for the guests, though you can always tell when they're about to clock out, because that's when they're most animated. Someone told Merlin his time was up, and he practically danced down the street like he'd just been told the bar was open and drinks were on Walt. Yeah, fat chance, mate. Nowhere is this aspect more obvious than on the Halloween nights, which we'd enjoyed at Walt Disney World before, and which Disneyland definitely has an edge on here. The night all about wandering around and encountering different Disney villains, interacting with the guests through much less formal meet and greet locations, picking people out and taking pot shots, especially if you're in costume. I was also in costume, you know. Hopefully the first to do this before he becomes official. I found a babysitter. I hope that's funny one day. And while I'd love to show you the moment I turned a corner and found myself stared down by Wanda for a solid minute, you know, I couldn't record everything. You'll just have to imagine it and the apologies that followed for yourselves.
So good.
actually turned out to be a good length of time to leave between the visits, because a large cycle of promises had sort of come to fruition. When I was there before, half of the sister park, California Adventure, was still undergoing huge changes, searching for its identity after former CEO Michael Eisner couldn't make it stick. Next time, King. Under successors Bob Iger and then Bob Chapek, the park has taken on a considerable transformation, with the entrance now Buena Vista Street, the boardwalk changing to Pixar Pier, and the failing A Bug's Land becoming Avengers Campus. Oh, I mean, replaced with. It's safe, don't worry. The back of Disneyland is now also Star Wars Land, and yeah, it's got another name and was supposed to be dedicated to the new movies, but that's already something they're backtracking on. I don't care if it's Batuu or Klaatu or Nosferatu. There's robots, sandy-looking buildings, stormtroopers, my one and only bro, it's full of droids and lumpy doofus. It's fair to call it whatever you prefer.
Look, I don't know what this is, but I'm convinced this is called like Libby Bubba or something.
I thought it was a pretty stellar update, brilliantly designed and with a lot of cool integrations beyond rides we'll absolutely be seeing more of.
I did that!
The main attractions are more of a mixed bag, unhelped by there only being two. There's the bones of a really good ride with Smuggler's Run, where you get to man the Millennium Falcon with 5 other people, wonderfully detailed right down to the rickety interior floors.
What a piece of junk!
But I can see why people might find it underwhelming given it's the same mission every time, while another older ride now has multiple interchanging adventures every new visit. And you know, it is just pressing buttons if you're not driving the ship. But more successful is probably Rise of the Resistance, combining bits of everything Disney does well: animatronics, immersive performance, and thrill rides. If I cared more about the sequels and wasn't imagining what it would be like with the original characters, I'd probably call it a new favourite. The Cantina's worth a trip, by the by. Glad this fella's enjoying his new job. Avengers Campus is still desperately in need of a third attraction, and what's there feels a little thin as it stands. But I think the level of showmanship has made up for the decision, and you'd hope it can be expanded on later. It's a place where you don't just meet characters and ride rides. There's a genuinely fun sense of character detail strewn throughout the tightly packed space that makes it feel like a lived-in monument to the MCU, in the form of a theme park. A big bread. A lot of those characters can be seen going about their business, just hanging out and doing stuff, working the crowd in different ways than a chat and a photo op.
The brain is a muscle. This is a muscle. This is a muscle. This is all muscles. I'm covered in brains.
One thing they do now is have characters turn up the same day they debut on screen, a fiendishly clever bit of synergy that incentivizes return visits. You never know who's going to show up next. You know, even I, defender of John Watts' misunderstood films that I am, was skeptical of a Spidey ride based around him leaning into the Stark internship, but the feel of the character is still there, from the New Yorker energy of the building exterior to him creating another problem for himself and getting in way over his head, including a gag they're running with that's always been funny.
I'm gonna go find Spider-Man first of all, because he's around here somewhere. Okay, goodbye. Spider-Man!
Rosie, I love this boy. Maybe the place was doing things to my brain. I was even starting to enjoy Cars Land. Cars Land. I don't even like those movies. But I'm impressed at the dedication to make a land that feels like it was built for those characters first, and then given access to the rest of us. At night, I just enjoy the way it looks and pretend I'm in American Graffiti. Listen, I can even pay my respects to the Paul Newman car. Don't tell me they're not trying. The real breaking point came when we were in the line for the, not making this up, ride where you can be a car at a barn dance, listening to the same songs going round, and realised for the first time that the Italian car was none other than Mrs. Maisel's own Tony Shalhoub. And what did they have this award-winning comedic genius singing?
Pumpkin, pumpkin, pumpkin Halloween. Pumpkin, pumpkin, pumpkin Halloween.
Please tell me there's footage of him doing it. Yes! Oh, thank God. I can't believe it.
I just feel very, very connected to this character. They keep giving me great stuff to do.
While I found my fun, this is where some of the big issues began to come into play, with one of the major concerns raised by these overhauls being the heavy use of IP. That might sound strange to many not in the loop. Disney has always used its films and properties in the parks. Bringing those films to life is a huge part of why you go. But it gets more complicated. The core lands and parks are not specifically based on IPs, but on genres and concepts. Many older or beloved rides are based on IPs that have fallen out of favour, and some are original to the parks and, on occasion, get adapted into properties after the the fact. The parks don't all share the same rides or even the same updates to rides, so there are different versions of each attraction scattered across the planet that people debate the merits of constantly. A lot of purists out there, and understandably so. It's a history worth experiencing for yourself, and they want to see that passed down if possible. At some point in the Eisner era, that began to change as newer Disney films were incorporated into the parks. The Haunted Mansion has run a Nightmare Before Christmas theme around 6 months of every year for over a decade. The Swiss Family Robinson tree became the Tarzan tree. The Submarine Voyage ride was going to become an Atlantis attraction, swapped out under his successor for a property that best represented his own plans. Iger's prerogative during his reign was acquisitions, to buy up franchises like Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar and to distribute those brands through the facets of the business, the parks included. It was the new acquisitions that entirely reshaped California Adventure, originally intended as a tribute to the state it lived in, which absolutely backfired for so many reasons. And if Eisner couldn't make that work, well, nobody could. You don't know his power.
Sit down, please. You're blocking our view.
Sorry, Mr. Eisner. Excuse me. It'll never happen again.
The arguments around the use of IP and changing rides or lands to use them get kinda messy from here. While it's acknowledged these are active businesses that have to adapt to audiences' tastes, the concerns are whether or not an overhaul offers anything more than a simple coat of paint, or if you lose the park's identities when they're themed entirely around properties instead of the established park's, themes. There's a reason people love Mystic Manor in China, an attempt to give that park a haunted mansion without infringing on their cultural taboos around ghosts, resulting in an incredibly cool attraction totally unique to the Disneylands. I do think huge tentpole rides like Space Mountain that have remained popular should continue to sell based on their intrinsic values rather than through other brands. Some of the movies they made based on attractions were very likely a way to try and keep them alive. And while that led to some changes on Pirates, the refurb for the Jungle Cruise stayed fairly true to itself rather than the movie. Although I thought it was a good movie. Jesse Plemons talked to bees.
Good afternoon, my friends.
That said, I think they can get away with rethemes around IP depending on the context. The Marvel Land works for an ever-popular and expanding property, with the updated Tower of Terror at least tweaked to fit the feel of the film, the original version currently existing in other parks. Pixar Pier is fairly superficial in its changes, but it allows them to create a place that incorporates all those popular movies, and I have to be honest, there was a lot more life to it now than there was when it was the plain boardwalk. Though I won't lie, it does help how many of these changes are aggressively targeting me specifically.
Because I was the ball, but I was the ball.
I don't know that I can be mad at every change when I see the effect on the audience, even with things I might disagree with on principle. Angry folks online called the use of IP characters in It's a Small World a tacky defilement of Walt's legacy. I think it still honours the work of its designer Mary Blair while giving kids more reason to engage with a ride that already lost people who didn't like it years ago. I'm not sure that it's the best result, but like the recent Swiss Family Robinson Tree revival, it doesn't feel irreversible. Just ask Iago and Zazu. Oh, wait, you can't. They're burning in hell. Where I do agree it might be an issue is with basing an entire land on an IP that may not have that kind of longevity, especially if that plan is around a constrained IP or a single film at the height of its popularity. Avatar seems to work because it fits the land it's in, and, should Cameron's plan to beat this into pop culture's brain not work out, it can probably be justified as something else down the line. But building all of Arendelle in the studio parks? Frozen is still very popular, but I don't think the sequel helped its staying power, and I don't know if it was wise to build a new land solely around it when the option was there to create something like the new Fantasyland expansion in Florida that could incorporate lots of other past and future fantasy rides, but mostly Gaston. We've already seen a cutback on the Frozen show in Calaventure, which itself replaced the long-running and incredibly popular Aladdin show. Amazed I was able to catch that at all now. I mean, maybe don't take this from me because it's major projection. I'm not a fan of that film, and I've actually been fine with its inclusion in other things I like. But I've also been feeling recently like I might not be alone on that anymore. The greatest issue, however, is the park's general management. Crowding's still a problem, admittedly exacerbated by major closures on our visit, but also by the current optional system, Genie Plus, which gets you into fast-pass lanes and other perks for a fee. Full disclaimer, we struggled to get onto rides and used the system on the last 2 days to get the most out of them, and sure enough, it cut the waits down significantly. Early in the day, anyway. We are exactly the people they wanted to bait. People who don't live locally trying to make up time. I can only imagine how much it taxes the folks who've already paid quite a bit to get out there to begin with while making the queues longer for everyone else. Since I left, that price has already gone up, and it's possible my small involvement has gone towards that. It's not a great feeling. Some of this feels like an extension of the problem I saw in 2008, and walking around I heard folks say, it's always busy now. Seems to be an accepted deal at this point. I don't think it's a problem that the parks can get busy. You can't discourage a worldwide audience or the people who feel they have to be here every day. But this one is pushed to a level of busy that makes it a mission. You have to be up early with a military-grade plan for your entire day. And the current methods aren't making this easier for the first or one-time visitors without knowledge of all these insider details. With the 100th coming up, I can only imagine the crowds that are going to come to all of these parks and how they're going to struggle too. Worse still, people don't feel those costs are fully reflected in the overall quality control the way they have been before. The staff are underfunded and undercut by the layoffs that occurred under COVID, and have yet to return to normal levels, with further troubling actions put into effect since. With this burden comes business yet to be dealt with, renovations the parks are badly in need of, and cracks in the facade that were definitely noticeable on our visit. From what I hear, these are issues cropping up across all the parks. Things are being cut back while guests are nickel and dimed at every turn, and you have to wonder what you're getting for all those continued price hikes. But look, I'm not sure I'm on the money with all of this. There are so many people better positioned to talk to you about this stuff, and the real problem's that, if this has got you interested, maybe you can read up on based on what I've discussed. I was mostly trying to figure out what this gremlin was up to.
Fish.
These issues don't erase the park's inherent qualities, and we made it work. I certainly don't have any solutions, and I'm not angling to go for a lot of repeat trips. As if I could if I wanted, I ain't robbing a bank. But it's made me better understand complaints I'd seen since the changeover. I think we all wondered if any of that would be addressed at, say, a convention a few blocks down the road. Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would. Wasn't this though.
I love you, Rosenthal!
D23 is what I like to call a premium convention. Not the biggest I've ever seen, but probably one of the most curated. I'll be honest, it's weird for me to go to a con and not have a bunch of long boxes to sift through for cheap trades. I don't know what else to do. I wasn't trained for this. Pins. Pins. So many pins. A country of pins. No doubt being assessed for value by crypto folks as we speak. It's truth. It's a weird one, because usually there's open booths of merchandise and art, and a few of those are still here. But because most of this is cleared through or by the company, it's more gated stores and product samples. Kind of like a mattress convention. Come see our new ideas, read our manifestos, meet Raven's dad. What is this? Oh, dystopian. But that's not to say I didn't get anything out of this. As a place for the superfans, it did have some incredibly interesting exhibits I knew I wouldn't get a chance to see otherwise. Things I thought only I wanted to see. Stuff that was great to view up close, or that I otherwise wouldn't have thought about in between the usual product endorsements. Yes, I have the new sets, you can relax. I'm actually kinda stoked they put something similar to my idea from the Villainous video into practice. You know, the Lotto set, it's also the place where I get to see people I'm just never going to back home. We were lucky enough to get a couple of panel openings to events with various guests, and thanks to my sister's costume, we even ran into some of the current Muppeteers on the show floor, who are all lovely by the way.
What's going on?
I got to meet some folks I followed for a long time, and one who, yeah, that guy's the real deal, man. You know, my sister brought up my channel, and he was about to ask what it was, and I was gonna tell him before Rocco showed up and distracted us, so you gotta understand, it was an important moment, okay? But for many, the event was missing the truly big show-stopping announcements that would instill confidence in future plans. Due to a new reservation system, the only major panel we managed to get into was the opening ceremony. And I'll be honest, when my sister said she had Bob Chapek getting booed on her bingo card, I thought that was a joke. It established the mood going forwards.
Bob Iger, the CEO then, said something to us. Yes.
A lot of people were very confused about whether they were there for Chapek's benefit or Iger's, with us spending most of the time sitting around listening to celebos say their bit, then clapping, then another speech, then some more clapping, and bless them for trying to keep it moving.
Are we bored yet with speeches?
Didn't think this would be where I'd gain newfound respect for Josh Gad, but, well, here we are.
And there was this little character named the Genie that inspired me to one day dare to dream of creating a character as memorable, funny, and beloved. I failed, but
the general feeling was that they were light on major announcements, films that didn't get a lot of people that excited. Yet another remake I think we're all numb to now. Park plans filled with empty promises and small offerings felt underwhelming after a 3-year gap, especially after the frustrations people had experienced recently. And Marvel kind of annoyed some people by half reiterating a bunch of stuff they'd already announced at San Diego Comic-Con not long before. You know, I wanted to get into the Marvel panel for the big FF announcement, to hear Matt Shakman get picked as the director. I got dressed up for the occasion. occasion. I was technically there, right? Dissatisfaction had definitely come off of recent releases, which is my way of saying I've now seen Ms. Marvel, and yeah, you can go for it. I know, still one of the few die-hard comics guys going to bat for the MCU as a concept, but whether or not you feel it's deserved, this phase has struggled to earn its reputation, with Thor 4 a personal low point in my own investment. That's a great shame. Even as someone who enjoyed Doctor Strange and loved No Way Home, it's been a difficult phase to stick with, and I have to wonder how much has been going on behind the scenes as gears shifted to a post-Endgame plan. Of course, that's not enough for me to drum up a loud thumbnail to declare it's all ruined and bad. Oh my god, you guys, it's over. It's terrible. Everyone's stupid now. These aren't problems Disney or Marvel hasn't faced before. From my experience, the work is always one step behind the audience, and even when they're creating things for the MCU that still do well regardless of whatever the noise around them is at the time, I never get the sense they're remaining wholly complacent and trying to please only their existing fans. I haven't loved any of the Disney Plus shows, but they've all had something to them that shows an effort to work outside the box, to try different ideas that might spark with an audience and refocus their plans, no doubt as part of a phase that was always going to act as a transition, even under the circumstances of change they've been faced with. I'm still invested in seeing how this pans out, especially now they're finally involving the fish people. She-Hulk kind of felt like the perfect example of the stalls they're currently sitting between. I didn't think it was all that well written throughout. A lot of obvious California speak, a lot of missed opportunities in some of the choices made, but for everything I didn't care for, there was something I'm glad they made happen and let exist at all. And it's not what you think. Ow, okay, sorry. And even if the news seemed a little anemic, I think we felt that change with at least one D23 announcement. It was where they revealed that composer Michael Giacchino, most well known for legendary soundtracks such as Maui Mallard, was getting his first leadership gig directing Werewolf by Night, which I can now say is my favourite thing Marvel's put out for Disney+. It even had BB Glazer from Frasier, playing BB Glazer from Frasier. We're already seeing more announcements almost immediately for special presentation projects off the back of this success, which everyone's reacting to well, gives them a better chance to experiment and add a bunch of new players to the board without overextending everyone involved. You can see how something like Moon Knight would have been way better off as one of these. The one new ride they were going to put at Avengers Campus being revamped into a multiversal adventure felt like another positive step, giving themselves the excuse to use the multiverse as a way to encourage alternate takes, and no doubt a part of a longer strategy that may outlive the MCU as a whole. There's only so many past movie characters they can bring back, and it was your fault they're doing that anyway. Fun though it may be for a while, that too will pass. And it's not just the case for Marvel. The Muppets are still spitballing new concepts and trying not to get stuck in their ways. The Imagineers are attempting a lot of new ideas that were pretty novel. Maybe rough around the edges in practice, but fascinating to see the technicals up close. It's great stuff, and definitely the best booth of the show. We went to see master animators Eric Goldberg and Mark Henn talk about their current efforts to hire new people proficient in traditional animation for projects they currently can't talk about, so there's that. I may have gushed to Mark about how great it was they came back to make Princess and the Frog happen. Sorry, Mark. Change feels possible. There just needs to be someone inciting a positive influence on the staff who, as usual, are doing their level best to make things happen, even if management isn't giving the greatest signs. The wounds from Iger's exit were still fresh and tension was in the air, from Chapek as much as anyone else. I don't know if he was all that comfortable in this position either.
Well, hiya, Mickey.
Oh, hiya, Bob. I was just talking to myself.
I must say, it looks pretty good up there.
I doubt we'll know the full story for a long time, but there was already a lot of conflicting messages coming from the swap that seemed designed to undermine it. Not that he needed much help.
Our fans and our audiences put their kids to bed at night after watching Pinocchio or Dumbo or Little Mermaid. They're probably not going to tune into another animated movie. They want something for them.
It's not that Disney hasn't warranted criticism before or never will, yet it's another period where the people within are as concerned as the people without, which is why I can't see things staying the way they are for long. Are they too big to fail? Maybe, but things move fast in this town, and they've fallen from great heights before. There's already a lot of concerns around the various streaming services and the way artists are being dealt with as many opportunities are taken away, and Disney's news about commitment to a bottom line continues to roll in. I can't imagine these actions are in the best long-term interests of anyone involved for it to remain the norm without consequence. This is the history of entertainment, and especially of Disney. As someone said online, they've seen their peaks and they've seen their valleys, and I think it's safe to say that, as things stand now, we're in a bit of a valley. What's that? Chapek's out? Iger's back? Oh, damn it. I've just... I spent like a month and a half trying to get this little video together. I don't really want to re-record this. Can you send him back for a few days? Most everything you've heard before I recorded ages ago. This last little bit you're about to hear, well, Interesting now, huh? I remember years ago I watched Waking Sleeping Beauty with my animation industry buddies, and one of them made a good point, as Andy often does, that through the chaos stirred up by management, the animators seem to be the ones adapting the most, trying to find fun in the situation, or just putting out the best work they could under the circumstances while they had the opportunity to do so. And I think that's always going to be a thing. I saw that both at the convention and the park. Very talented people using the platform to try and provide the best possible experiences, and I imagine they'd be doing that with or without Disney. And those are the efforts I'm investing in. It's a curious time, with some worrying trends. I can't pretend to know it's all going to be okay, but as usual, I'm optimistic some good can come from the lessons this period will teach. I certainly experienced a lot of good while I was out there, and was reminded of all the things I've always enjoyed, while finding foundations for plenty of great new things that can be built on. And if anything, it highlighted what's already valuable, how much the place thrives on serious human investment. That's the stuff people want to see, and it's up to the guys upstairs to remember to pay it forward, look after it, and make the most of what they have while it's there, or risk losing it for good. I don't see change as a matter of if, only when. Oh yeah, we went to Vegas.
Why does it look like Greece?
Wasn't there for long, but blimey, what a culture shock. Step out of Mickey Mouse Land to the first time I think I've smelled smoke indoors for like 5 years, jeez. Still, we were close enough that we thought we might as well go and see it, you know, take in the culture, catch the landmarks, and the frogs, and the frogs, and the frogs. We saw where Elvis was. That was pretty emotional, actually. It was a really, really good experience. And it's nice to see that he's doing all right after having written Marry the Mole. It's such a baffling culture shock being here. All these, you know, subterranean corridors of filth and food and games. But, you know, it's nice knowing wherever you are in the world, however shell-shocked, Poirot is there to figure it all out.
It's Batman!
It really is adult Disney now, isn't it? All the theming and the extravagance and the crowd-pleasing spectacle and none of the tact. Really enjoyed this one. That was a good time.
Oh no! Jesus Christ!
Gosh, it was such an odd way to tail it off, and I'm really glad I did it, but you know, I was having dreams for weeks afterwards of walking those long subterranean corridors with so many, you know, machines and dancing girls and cigarettes and mascots and mariachi bands, so many mariachi bands, and all I could think the whole time was, wow, Scorsese nailed it. What a great film.
So you know you're in a Vegas airport.
This totally devolved, didn't it? Oh well, bye.
Everybody loves to have a honkin' Halloween.
It's like the peanut butter baby. It's like, does it feel good?